this is take 4. Today we are going to talk about the Malaysian road tax system, and why we think that it needs some reforming. So why don't you give our audience some context?
So basically, I've actually done a bit of research on this topic, and it's gonna sound a bit like a lecture for the first 15 minutes, but this is
So bear with
important
us.
context. Yes, important
Yes.
context for the topic of how would we reform Malaysia's road tax system. So,
Mm.
for those who aren't Malaysian and probably don't care, Malaysia has an annual road tax that we pay based on engine displacement and vehicle variant. Non-saloons pay less than saloon cars, where saloons also include hatchbacks and cabriolets, and non-saloons include things like MPVs, SUVs, and pickups. The road tax also varies from Peninsular and East Malaysia, with East Malaysia paying less road tax than what the Peninsular Malaysians pay.
What's the basis of that? Why do West Malaysians pay more than East Malaysians?
I haven't found the official reason, but the anecdotal reason I heard is that because the roads in Sabah and Sarawak are less developed, to put it
Okay,
kindly.
that's fair enough.
And also,
Okay.
I think they also drive more larger 4x4s, and those usually have bigger engines, so that's why they pay a bit less. And in general, they are less developed, so they
Mm.
should pay less road tax.
Yeah, fair enough. So, you want to talk about your personal experience with road tax in Malaysia and why you think like using just the engine CC, well, as a main factor in taxing in road tax is actually not that accurate.
Well, I think we should start on what the money is being used for in our road tax first, because that is quite a thorny subject.
Mm. Yeah, I
And
think
I think you're better at explaining that because you've
yeah.
actually read through this more than I have.
Mm, mm, mm. So when people talk about road tax, right, immediately comes to mind is that a tax that goes towards funding road projects and infrastructure. But this is actually not the case. In Malaysia, according to an article by Webcar, which we will link below in this podcast, the road tax that we pay actually goes towards a consolidated fund, which the government, central government holds. So this fund is not just the road tax, but also includes like income tax, import. Is import duty part of tax?
Yeah,
Anyway, all parts of tax that goes towards this fund. So it's actually not used to maintain roads. In fact, roads are maintained by local governments where the tax is collected through land tax, cukai tanah or cukai taksiran. So that's a bit of some background information there.
because going into tax itself is a bit too deep for us, even though we do spend most of the time not really knowing what we're talking about. We should instead just focus on the actual method of taxation, how
Mm.
the road tax is being taxed or being calculated, instead of
Mm.
focusing where the road tax money goes to, which, if history tells us anything, it will probably go to a politician's pocket.
Yeah. Well, but this is all speculation, where our money will go, and we will never know exactly what the money is going to be used for, whether it's for healthcare projects or other things lah. So that's why
Tiny
we're not going to
odds.
delve deep. Yeah, we're not going to delve too deep into it. And so yeah, this is where we're going to keep our topic to, is how the road tax, how tax road tax should be. Mm,
Okay, what metrics should we use to calculate road tax?
mm, yes.
Yes. But going back to your initial question on whether I agree with the current system of road taxation,
Mm.
I kind of do. I
That's because
agree
it
with,
suits you, right?
yes, I agree with this system of road tax because I have gamed the system, kind of.
Mm. You want to talk the audience through how you manage to find yourself a little loophole?
Okay, I, as I've mentioned quite a few times already, I presume, have a Polo 1.2, and I'm only paying 55 ringgit for road tax on my 1.2 liter car.
Mm.
But because my car is turbocharged, it's actually quite fast. So
Yeah.
I'm paying a small amount for road tax, but I'm having the benefits of a bigger engine. Like compared to the 1.6 that is also available, my car is faster than the naturally aspirated 1.6 Polo, but I'm also paying less road tax than those who have the 1.6.
Not to mention it's faster and also more expensive, right? It's the top of the line,
Yes.
your 1.3. So
Ooh,
that's why we think it doesn't really engine CC doesn't actually say much about the car.
yes.
Um,
So my car is
also,
both more expensive, faster, but I'm paying less road tax than the cheaper 1.6 that came after.
mm. And an example that push this loophole even further, I want to add is the A45 AMG, right? It's a 2 liter, I believe, 2 liter
Yes.
four-cylinder turbocharged, right?
Yes.
So with that engine, I think it produces like 400 at the latest model lah. I think A45S, about 400 low 400 horsepower, right? And you're only getting taxed about 380 ringgit for the 2000 cc engine capacity. Um, 400 horsepower. It's the kind of power that V6 or V8 will be producing. Don't you think so?
Sorry, I'm just
And
shocked. I can't I forgot it was 400 over horsepower.
yeah,
I thought it was
yeah,
just 300 plus.
yeah. That was the
I've
old
just
one, and the new
I've
one
just searched
is
it when you were talking. I was like, "What?
yeah. It's crazy, right?
Okay,
I mean, it's a marvel of engineering how they did it.
it is."
Yes, but going back to my point, like this kind of power is something a V8 or V6 over like 3000 cc kind of car only will be able to make 400 over horsepower, but yet they're only paying 380 ringgit. Um, so just for comparison's sake, lah, for a 3000 cc
Straight
car,
6.
right?
Yeah,
Three,
say like
sorry,
a 330i.
yeah, 330i. Is it actually a straight six?
The old one is.
Okay, let's just say an old
Yeah,
330i with a straight
330i.
six.
Yeah, like say an E46. Yeah, E46
Mm,
330 Ci,
barely
which is a nice
making,
car.
yeah, it's a nice car, but making over like 300 horsepower, let's just say, and you're being
Mm-hmm.
taxed 2000 ringgit a month.
A year.
Compared to, sorry, a year compared to the 2000 cc, which is, I believe, yeah, 380. If we go on the more extreme side to about 4000 cc, yeah, it's almost double of the 3000 cc, which is at 6000 ringgit a
Yeah.
year.
We should have made it clear that it's a exponential scale for
Yes,
road tax in Malaysia.
yes, it's
Anything
not
above
linear.
2000 cc is already mad.
Mm. Well, of course, this is just based on horsepower lah, obviously. But the fact that a almost 400k ringgit car is only taxed 600 ringgit road tax a year, which is comparable to other cars such as like a base C class, or okay, what other like Japanese cars like a Mazda 3? Do they have a 1.8 or 2
You bring up a good point
2.0?
with Mazda because Mazda's
Mm,
with the Sky Active technology, they use
2.5, right?
big displacement, yes. So
Yeah,
the road tax is
yeah.
expensive.
Mm-hmm.
And that is
And
that is the problem with like the CX5 and the basically the CX5 like, is the massive 2.5-liter turbo. And it's
yeah,
like, who would
yeah.
pay for the road tax there? Because the CRV is only at 1.5 now.
So although they are in a similar class, similar price, similar horsepower, but yet the CX-5 you're paying so much more road tax.
And for the family man, you're gonna feel the pinch every time you pay the road tax.
Mm-hmm.
And that might
And
persuade more buyers to go for the CRV, which it's happening right now.
yeah, I think it also makes sense for car manufacturers to bring cars in the country, those with lower displacement, just to cheat this system. And hence why we say that this method of taxing is actually flawed.
I think the better word to use here is antiquated. Because last time the power and size of your car was
Yeah,
based on CC. How
because
luxurious your car was also based on CC. So the road tax system made sense. But with
mm,
turbos and forced induction,
mm,
you can have small engines with big power, but you're still paying
yeah,
less road tax.
yeah. So
And
yeah, it's antique.
just before we move on, we have to say that we do understand that there is excise duty, and there we know that we are paying a lot for cars in general. And yes, don't write into us telling us that, but we were just discussing here on what we think the current metrics of road taxation should be.
Because obviously, when we're talking about import duty and excise duty, these are justified through many reasons,
Protectionism,
which, yeah, which is like already established and it makes
yes.
sense in Malaysia at least. But we
Does
just
it make
think that
sense though? Do we need to
we've grown
protect
accustomed to it. We've
do
grown
we need to
accustomed to
protect
it,
our
right?
lovely proton, which is technically Geely, but I shouldn't say that.
Uh,
Okay, we should
it's
we should we should not open that can of worms. Let's just go back to
yeah,
road tax.
okay, yeah. So we just can't wrap our head around how cars are taxed in Malaysia, and that's why we are talking about this today.
So, just as a comparison, we have looked at how other countries do it, and looking at a wide variety of countries, we came up with three main characteristics of taxation for road tax, and that is through emissions, engine characteristics, which could be things from number of cylinders, engine capacity, and horsepower.
Power, mm,
Yes. And thirdly is weight, the weight
mm.
of the car.
I guess the weight of the car has something to do with how much damage it will cause to the road. So obviously, bigger trucks will obviously cause more damage to the road than a small car, right? So I think that's the reasoning behind taxing based on weight.
There is also another good point to make for weight is that larger, more luxurious cars tend to be heavier.
Mm. For the exception of like pickup trucks and utility vehicles lah.
Yeah, but
Uh,
if you think of it like luxury sedans and large SUVs tend to be
mm,
more heavy.
yeah, yeah, generally, yeah. So let's start off with emissions. I think this one is quite popular in the European countries, where they
UK,
are
for
trying to cut.
example, uses emissions.
Yeah, UK, for example, uses emissions. So the goal for the government is to actually um, reduce carbon emissions. And I guess well, the most straightforward way of incentivizing low emission vehicle and thereby achieving net zero is through taxing vehicles with high emissions. And I think if I'm not wrong, this also goes on an exponential scale, like the engine CC.
Yes.
Yeah, so obviously in this case, electric cars will obviously not be taxed because they don't emit any carbon
Anything,
dioxide.
yes.
Yes, and your economical car, your economy car, those small subcompact will obviously be taxed less because it's light, it has a small engine, and therefore it emits less well CO2.
Mm-hmm.
And on the other hand, something like a V8 Mustang would is obviously a gas guzzler, big engine, heavy car, and it will be taxed a lot more lah.
Well, I think emissions has to do also with it doesn't necessarily have to do with drinking gas, but it's just that
Mm.
how efficient the engine is.
Yes, yes, yes. And that is why I think there's a huge incentive for car makers all across the world actually to make vehicles more and more efficient, but through the means of turbocharging or hybrid systems. And that's why you see there's a big market for these kind of cars nowadays, targeted towards the Europe market.
Do you agree with them taxing it on emissions?
Mm, yeah, I do agree because, well, generally in European countries, their focus is really big on environment lah. I would say in the past decade, since the past decade, they have plenty of goals to achieve net zero by 2050. And
Yeah.
well, obviously, transport is one small chunk of the pie lah of emissions, but they are just trying to reduce wherever they want. They are wherever they can. Sorry. So I think it is fair lah how they are doing it. Do you have an opposing opinion?
I don't have an opposing opinion, but I just have an irrational disagreement to charging on emissions. I have no idea. I cannot explain quite why, and I've been trying to think of a reason while you were talking. And I think
Yeah.
it's just that I maybe I like V8 cars. I like gas guzzlers, so it's the
Uh,
like
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm gonna
Though
be
we all
paying
do.
more.
Mm,
Yes,
yeah. But you see, these are the well, people like you are the types of people that are, ruining the planet.
I know.
So it's good. I mean, it's not good for us, but we're thinking on a macro scale. In when you're talking about the whole country, then I guess it makes sense lah for such policies to exist.
Okay, I think
Uh,
we would get
yeah,
back to this topic in a little bit because it
yeah,
also gets back to our fundamental disagreements on taxation. But let's just focus on the two other topics. Well, let's just, since we've done weight and emissions, let's just discuss a little bit more on energy characteristics and what you think about taxing power and,
mm.
well, power basically.
Technically, power has nothing to do. Well, it has a little bit to do with how valuable, how expensive the car is. Obviously, a more expensive car will have more power. But other than that, I don't see why you would tax based on engine characteristics, though.
I think taxing based on horsepower is actually not too bad an idea because the more power you have,
Mm,
it's it will usually be in a more expensive car.
mm,
So I don't mind taxing based on horsepower because
yeah,
maybe selfishly, I also think that we don't need a lot of horsepower to have fun.
yeah, yeah. So it doesn't work against us.
Yes, I think that is what I'm thinking of selfishly, that it doesn't ruin my fun.
Mm, okay. Do you think that maybe one of the reason why they tax based on like horsepower or CC is because, well, more powerful cars are more prone to accidents and causing disruptions on the road? What do you think about that?
I'm unwilling to say that there is a correlation that or there is a causation, but
Causation.
I think there is at least a correlation
Mm,
to this having more power and having more accidents.
because technically, like a car wouldn't need, of course, like different classes of car would need different amounts of power. But I think generally to drive on the road, you don't need that much power, right? So anything more than a
Yes,
certain range would be excessive already, and then that is why they would tax on it. That's just my thought.
I think I do agree with you. I think I always harbor the belief that we don't need any
Mm,
car more than
yeah,
300 horsepower
yeah,
as a normal car. Anything more
yes,
than that is already very excessive.
mm,
It's nice to have, of course,
yeah,
and I wouldn't say no to an A45, but
mm,
300 horsepower is
yeah,
good
and
enough.
I guess that's why they're taxing cars with high horsepower. But I also just want to bring in the fact that we separated these a few characteristics, right? Emissions, engine characteristics, and weight. So I think in general, like I said earlier, emissions is more popular in European countries, while engine characteristics are more popular in Asian countries. And I'm not saying that it's correlated, but would you agree that Asian countries not so big on saving the environment and reducing emissions, and that is why they don't focus so much on taxing based on emissions?
Yeah, I know it's very unpolitically correct, but yes, the Asian countries are not that into the
Mm.
whole green
I
thing
guess
yet.
when the green thing catches on in Asia, then road taxation system will also follow through to tax based on emissions. Hence why we also say that the current system taxing on CC alone is quite antique and it needs some updating lah in due time. But having introduced a few ways of taxation by all the different countries, what do you think the ideal taxation system is?
Well, going back to the three, I mentioned that I'm not too keen on emissions because I like big V8s. Engine characteristics,
Mm,
I'm kind of okay. Weight, I'm probably
yeah,
really okay with
yeah,
that because I like lightweight cars. But if I were to
mm,
implement a taxation system
yeah.
for to change the road tax, I would use the insured value of your car.
Which basically says reflects on how valuable your car is lah.
Yes.
Mm.
So if your car is more
Mm.
valuable, you pay more
Yeah,
tax.
that does make sense lah. Um,
What do you think?
okay, so what you just said about taxing based on the insurance and the one before that where you were talking about how it might favor you, obviously you're just joking, right? It's like two completely different scenarios, right?
No, I think that thinking selfishly, taxing on the
Oh,
value of the car,
yeah,
I
because
could
okay,
benefit from still, but it is also fair enough
okay, it's a
for
good
the
balance
rest of the
between what you
world.
want and what is good for the rest of the world.
Yes, if I
Mm,
was only going for one metric, I think
mm,
taxing based on the value of your car is the
mm,
best single
mm.
metric of
Well,
taxation that I
for
can think
your
of.
case, it's like yeah, I've always heard you say that you don't need to buy an expensive car to have fun, right? So yeah, a cheap car, for
Exactly.
example, oh, like our last episode on YouTube, we were looking through used cars on car list, and something like the Land Cruiser, it's cheap, it's only worth like 30k ringgit, but I'm sure road tax will be expensive as hell on those engines.
4.2 liters is how much?
Sabah
SUV Sabah
Sarawak
Sarawak.
for non-saloon cars. Oh, just 2,000 ringgit. It's still a lot, okay? Which is
It's
still a
still a
lot
lot.
for a hobby car lah. We're talking about like not a daily driver. It's still a lot to pay.
Mm.
And whereas if it were to be taxed based on the value of the car, then obviously you'll be paying much less lah. But yeah, I think there are some downsides in taxing based on just the value of the car. And in this case, you're
Go
just
on.
taxing based on how rich a person is or the kind of car that the person can afford, but you're not similarly to just the engine cc, the value of the car also doesn't say much in terms of like how polluting the environment is or how likely it is going to cause an accident you know so
Yeah, but it says more than engine CC, and because,
mm,
like we said in the Cayenne episode, more
yeah.
people like to buy new cars. So I can see this being a net benefit for the government and a net benefit for me who likes to
Okay,
buy
okay. So
depreciated
the
old cars.
government will be able to collect more funds because more people are buying new cars that are worth more. But the
Yes.
environmentalists will argue that, oh, your gas guzzling Land Cruiser is polluting the environment, but you're not paying any taxes.
But I think to the environmentalist, I can say that there are not going to be a lot of gas guzzling Land Cruisers out there, even with
Oh,
this
okay.
change in taxation
So you're
system.
saying that even though there's a change in the taxation system, like people won't be incentivized to just buy gas guzzlers just because it's
Yeah, because nobody would want to buy a
okay lah.
40-year-old Land Cruiser.
Okay.
Because if it's based on the value of your car,
Mm,
you're paying 40,000 ringgit. It's the same insured
mm,
value as,
mm.
say, a Myvi. And your Land Cruiser's still going to drink more fuel. And no one is going to be cross-shopping a 40-year-old Land Cruiser and a Myvi.
Okay, that's a very extreme
Unless you're me,
case,
lah.
but what if we think of something like what we said earlier, a CRV and the CX-5? I'm sure the CX-5 emits more CO2, it being a 2.5. So a person who
Yeah.
otherwise would have went for the CRV would now go to the CX-5 because there's no penalty on the bigger engine cc, and so there's no penalty on polluting the environment.
I still think you're still going to be
Oh,
paying for more fuel.
okay.
And
Mm,
you're being charged more, lah. But I the argument breaks down where we
tax
don't
on fuel.
the government doesn't
Okay.
tax our
So
fuel. Our fuel is
maybe to
subsidized.
make
Yeah.
your suggested method of taxation more robust, we should also add the part where fuel is taxed so that it covers like people who it covers the part where it punishes people for polluting the environment. So obviously if you have a gas guzzler but you use it only like once a week, then obviously you're not causing much harm to the environment, right? And hence it's not fair for them to tax you
Mm-hmm.
as if you were to drive that thing every day.
Yeah. And I can buy myself a LS400, an ancient one, and I
Mm,
have a V8 in that, 4 liters,
that is a
and I
very
don't use
fair
it a
way,
lot.
actually.
And I think also
Mm,
taxing on fuel although I
Mm,
will be initially opposed to it, I still think that that's also how you can game the system by having a turbocharged or
mm,
having a fuel efficient car that
mm,
pushes more people
which
to
is in
more
turn
fuel
better
efficient
for the
cars.
environment. Yeah, a lot of countries are taxing on fuel, I think.
Yeah, fuel duty is
Mm,
everywhere except
mm,
countries which produce oil, like
yeah,
here,
but
like
it's
sorry,
the
Malaysia.
fuel duty is just to disincentivize people from using so much petrol because they have to import it. Whereas I think it should be crude oil producing countries should also have such taxes on the basis of disincentivizing people from using cars that are not fuel efficient, even though they are oil producing countries.
I'm gonna throw this argument back to you into thinking, what do you think is the ideal taxation system
Mm,
in your opinion?
I think it's a bit hard to say lah because like we don't know what's the point of the road tax at the first place and where does the road tax money go towards. But I would say to come up with no aim in mind lah. You don't know what you are taxing for, because for example, like European countries, they know they want to reduce emissions, and then there are a lot of different examples out there lah of like different aims of why they tax. But having said that, no aim, I think that what would be good is to uh have a comprehensive review of the whole car, of what all the characteristics of the car, and tax based on all the little things. So everything that we've just discussed, the weight, the engine cc, power, fuel economy, and obviously CO2 emissions, and have a very detailed system whereby maybe it's calculated through an equation. Or me being an engineer, obviously I would say that. But yeah, say 10 factors.
I'm just thinking, that sounds like a
Yeah,
massive
10 factors,
equation
and
to have
you
10
put in
factors.
all the specs of your car, and then boom, there's a number there, the magic number. But in my opinion lah, I think it's good because especially when you don't know what's the aim of taxing and you want to tax fairly, it's the way to do it. So say let's take the Land Cruiser for example lah. Okay.
Before that,
Mm.
before that, I would just like to ask, what do you think is fair?
I think fair as in you should tax based on what's good for the country, and well, tax and punish people. Well, this sounds very communist, but tax people based on what is bad for the country, and reduce or incentivize like things that are good for the country. So if we okay, that's a very broad term lah. You might have to edit this out.
I was just saying, as in the road
Mm.
tax, in the sense of the road tax, what do you
Okay,
think
so
it's fair?
higher value, it tax more because it tax richer people more, right? Based on income, like based on the same principles of how you
Okay,
tax people with higher income more. Then, say if
okay.
it's high emissions, you tax more because it's polluting the environment. Heavy.
You keep going to this pollution issue, but maybe because I
Oh,
think
oh
Malaysia still
yeah,
doesn't care
yeah.
about pollution.
Okay, if you're talking about
I'm still like, why I don't see emissions being a maybe it's just me still clinging on to my V8. But yes, I'm still not convinced about this emissions thing in especially in
Okay,
a Malaysian
I see
context.
your point, but since we're talking about ideal taxation and
Ideal
also
taxation.
reinventing this Malaysian taxation system and making it
Okay.
timeless and foolproof, lah. I mean, we said that it was quite antique, and we want the current taxation system to be suitable for its time. So that's why I also brought up the thing with
Okay.
emissions, because especially if we don't know what we are taxing for, we might as well go ahead and tax people for polluting the environment, right? Since we're already taking 10 factors into account.
Okay. I do see your point because
Mm,
looking at it more rationally, if we tax based on emissions,
mm.
but we tax based on all these other factors as well, that means that EVs also won't be paying zero road tax.
Yeah, and I think that is only fair, what?
Yeah,
Don't you think so?
yeah, I agree.
So like a Tesla owner is a rich person, right? Obviously, and it is fair to tax. This is
Mm-hmm.
this might sound controversial, but in my opinion, it's fair to tax rich people more, and it's not fair for them to be exempted from road tax, for example. And you saying that Malaysia doesn't really care about emissions and all these things. yet as of now. But why do they incentivize like EV cars, and do they
Yeah, EVs now pay zero road tax.
oh
Because
yeah,
last
they
time it
tax
was
based
based
on
on
how many
power, which
kilowatt,
was
right?
also a
The
stupid system.
power. Yeah, it's stupid. It doesn't matter how many kilowatts. You're
Yeah,
not okay, fine, you're not polluting, but I guess how the higher horsepower, then it'll be worth more, and then you can tax more lah. I guess in that sense, it makes sense.
but I think in your massive equation, I think that is the best way to tax.
If you want to be fair lah.
Yes, in an ideal scenario where you tax based, you're
That's correct.
taxing those
So
who can afford
yeah lah,
it.
I think having like considering more factors would make a more comprehensive taxation system lah. Like, and it doesn't allow for loopholes for people like you to take advantage of.
But I would want to see, yes, true. I would want to see taxation also based on usage, as in,
Yes.
I still think that although this will hurt me, we should still tax either fuel or charging or somehow where, okay, maybe charging no, because if we get it from renewable sources, it's okay. But as much
Mm,
as I would hate to see the fuel price go above
mm.
what it is now in Malaysia, which is
Yeah.
very, very sweet, I can see rationally for there to be an argument to be made for
Okay.
fuel to
Um.
be
So
taxed.
you to tax the fuel, that is the aim is to tax people who use the road more, like who use the vehicle more. Do you think there's an alternative way to find out
Yes,
the frequency
yes.
or how much the car is used over a period other than taxing fuel?
I think fuel is the best because
Mm.
we don't
You
have
have to
any
come up
annual
with a new
inspection where we can
system.
check mileage and everything. So those who use the fuel,
Yeah.
yeah, and
Yeah.
even then it'll be
Okay.
easy to gain. I can just roll back the mileage. So taxing
Mm.
fuel is the most, because if you don't use the
Um.
fuel,
Well,
then
I'm
you
not an
don't drive.
economist, but could there be a could there be a case where you lower
Neither
the
am
price
I.
of the fuel, but you gain more revenue from taxing people who use it? How do
Uh-huh.
I put it in this? Oh no, it doesn't make sense. And then you tax, then it will come back to the same amount.
Yeah, how
Never
do you
mind,
lower
that
the
doesn't
price
make
and then
sense.
tax
Cut it
more
out, cut
people?
it out. But yeah, we just
I won't, I'll leave it in. But anyway, here is the other interesting question that might probably benefit me. Should we tax classic cars? Like cars older than 30 years old, should the tax be lower
mm,
or higher than a brand new car? Or to put it more broadly, I guess, should the
yeah,
tax on the car, if we are doing it based on the value system, your tax on the car should go down every
yes,
successive year
yes.
you own because the value of the car decreases. But should we tax classic cars based on the same value system? Or should we exempt them from road
Mm.
tax? Or should we have a flat
Well,
tax? Or
well,
what is
to
your
start off,
opinion?
classic cars obviously have a range of values. Like you have classic cars that are absolutely worthless, and classic cars that are very sought after and hence very valuable. Am I right?
Yes.
Okay, so then if you were to tax based on the value of a car, you follow the same system which you said earlier lah. A very sought after classic car would be taxed a lot, while a less sought after one will obviously be taxed less because it's cheaper. I think that shouldn't be the case. Obviously, you can still have the taxation system where it's based on value, but I think it can't be the same as new cars or non-classic cars lah to say. So I think they should have their own category for classic cars itself, because you're not meant to daily drive classic cars, am I right? So it doesn't make sense to, you know, tax classic
Yes.
cars the same way as you tax like normal cars on the basis that it is just not used as much as a daily driver or a normal car lah. Do you think that's fair?
I kind of agree with your point because
Mm,
initially my thought was that taxation on classic cars should be based on value. But then I was thinking that if I buy a Countach and bring it over to Malaysia, I'm not going to drive it a lot. I'm possibly going to drive it once
yeah.
every 2, 3 months
Yeah.
in my dream scenario. So I don't think I should be paying for
Go ahead.
This is sounding really hypocritical, I realize. But I don't think I should be paying that amount of
Mm,
money, that big chunk of money based on the value of the
yes.
car
Yeah. I
if
think
it's
that's fair.
basically a museum
That's
piece.
fair. Uh,
But then again, it goes back to
mm,
the fact that if I can afford such a car in the first place, I should have enough
but
money
that is on
to
the
pay for
basis
the
that
taxation of
the
it.
government want to tax the rich lah.
Yes,
Okay.
which both of us
Then
think
let
it's
me suggest a
fair.
compromise. You still tax the Countach. Okay, so let's give two examples of a classic car. On the high end, you have a Countach. Now, give me an example for a low end car.
I think of a really cheap low-end car with a big engine. Oh, the Lexus, the LS 400.
Okay, both are classics. Well, obviously, one is the Countach is worth way more than the Lexus, and hence it should be taxed more. But it
Uh-huh.
shouldn't. Okay, how much is a Countach? Like 1 million?
Ringgit easily.
Okay, let's just say 1 million lah. Okay, for
Uh,
argument's sake, I don't think that it should be taxed the same as like a brand new Porsche 911, which is about 1 million or so.
okay.
Instead, it should be in its own category, which is within the classic cars, still taxing the Countach more, but taxing the LS 400 less.
So we're still based on the value.
Based on the value, but it's less than what you would pay for a new car of a similar value. Does that make
Okay,
sense?
so let's say if we have a sliding scale on value, and let's say for the 1 million ringgit bracket,
Mm,
it is, let's say, 20,000 a year for a
mm.
911. I know that sounds steep, but
911 brand new.
yeah, brand new,
Yes.
out of the showroom,
Mm,
20,000 ringgit.
mm,
So the Countach, we will charge maybe 10,000 a year. These are rough
So
numbers.
rough
Yeah,
numbers lah, just an idea to explain our concept. So it's
yes,
like half whatever you're paying for a classic car, you pay half of
something like that. Yeah.
based on the value lah. Mm. I think that is fair lah because ultimately, like classic cars are low key made for show, right? You're not really going to drive them that
Yes.
often, and to call it a road tax, where you're taxing someone for like using the car, it doesn't make sense to tax as much as a daily driver lah. I would say.
And what do you think of modifications done to classic cars? Because in Malaysia, we do have a classic car road tax, but it's quite
Okay.
strict in regards to what can be done to the car. By which I mean it should be mainly stock.
So if you're saying if it's not stock, then you can't drive it.
No, let me see. You're paying the regular road tax, oh?
Oh, okay, okay, okay.
So I can't resto mod my LS 400. How about that?
I think it's also kind of fair in that sense because what makes a classic car a classic is what make up the car itself. What you can't be like resto modding a classic car, putting EV powertrain inside, resto modding the interior and making everything nice and daily drivable, and still have it considered a classic. What although it is a classic lah, but as a functional piece of car, you can't really say that it's a classic anymore.
Once again, you're talking sense. But I disagree with that because I like a resto mod.
Yeah, yeah.
I cannot explain my disagreement, but
Mm,
the only thing I can say is that I like a resto mod and I'm like, shit, I'm now having to pay more in our hypothetical scenario.
mm. Yes, yes. I think that is fair. Uh,
Okay,
but
just to
obviously
poke
you've
you a
got
bit
your
more,
dreams.
to what extent do you think that a resto mod will not classify as a classic car anymore?
Mm. So is this you're asking in terms of like the road taxation system or like just in general?
In the eyes of the law, in the eyes of the
In the
tax
eyes of
man.
the law. Okay.
Yes.
So we said that classic cars should be taxed less on the
Mm-hmm.
basis that it is not used as frequently as a normal car, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I would say that whatever modifications made to the classic car shouldn't be the type of modifications that increase the drivability of the car. So we're talking about um like the mechanical parts lah, and also like things like comfort as well. So like, okay, this is going to sound really stupid, but if a car doesn't have an AC and you put an AC inside, therefore making it more daily drivable, then it should not be allowed. Does that make sense?
It does. You make a lot of sense, but you're ruining my dreams.
That's what I'm here for.
I know. I was like, how much can I get away with? Once you said mechanical modifications, like, okay, there goes my 8-speed auto. And now you're even mentioning aircon. I was like, oh my.
The government should hire me, man.
I know.
I can be the tax man.
You're basically ruining all my classic car dreams.
No, but I'm with you on this one, but I'm just trying to be impartial here
I
and think
know.
from the perspective of the taxation system.
Because the
But I
only
get your
reason why I
pain.
want to be Minister of Transport is to reform this road tax system to suit me better. That was my
Uh,
only political ambition.
well, when you're a politician at that level, you wouldn't even need to worry about these little costs anymore. Okay,
Nah, man. This is righteous justice here.
and
Forget
you will be
feeding the
voted
poor
out of
and all those.
office.
It's okay. I just need one term.
And then after your term is done, someone's going to replace all the things that
I,
you've changed
I need to put in the
and revert
constitution.
it back.
I
Well,
need to
you
get
need
2/3
two-thirds.
majority. Yeah.
Oh, this
There are
this
so many.
podcast is more about politics.
There are so many things I could say now that is so political that will probably
Yeah,
I'll probably self-censor myself.
yeah. Let's not make this even more political than it
Yes.
already is.
So
Do
anyway,
we? Yeah.
where are we now? Don't know where we are.
I think we pretty much have a conclusion lah. Won't you say so?
Okay.
About taxation system and also got to do with how you tax classic cars. Obviously, there's your way, which is what suits you,
Mm-hmm.
and there's my way, which is I think is a fairer way lah for the general population.
Okay. So
Um,
just to sum up from
yeah,
our probably hour-long ramble,
mm,
we think that to reform the Malaysian road tax system, if we were going for one single metric, we'll go for value, insured
yes,
value.
yes, yeah. So
But the
because if you're talking about a single metric, then it's like easy lah, it's
mm,
one thing that does all to replace the engine CC metric. Yeah. Whereas well, if you have got a little more budget on your side and you want to get your hands dirty, then you can definitely consider taxing based on the various characteristics of the car, with characteristics that are good for the country being taxed less, and obviously characteristics that are bad being taxed more. And the idea is to consider all of these characteristics and factors to in an equation to give a magic number on how much your car should be taxed. And having considered all the characteristics, it should probably be the fairest way of taxing a vehicle.
and because we are not experts on this field, we cannot recommend the factors of taxation, but we do recommend that even though I don't like it, we include emissions,
Mm,
and of course there will be weight, engine characteristics, seating capacity maybe.
mm. In any way you can um classify a car or describe a car.
Yes, fuel type,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
value.
Mm.
So that will be the best way we can come up with changing our road
Yeah.
tax system.
Yes. Yes.
In terms of classic cars, we also agree that value may be the best idea,
Mm.
but we should maybe have it on a different percentage scale of
Yeah.
taxation.
Whereby the classic car gets taxed less overall compared to non-classic cars.
Yes, and we have not yet defined the term classic yet, but 30 years old is a good cutoff.
Mm. Mm. Yeah.
A
30
30
no,
year,
actually no. So 30 years ago was 1992. That wasn't
man,
that long ago.
I was trying to sneak this past you as well.
I would say 80s lah, 1980s at
Oh
least.
god, you're ruining the Japanese 90s dream.
Uh, if we're truly talking about classics, I think it should be at least the 80s lah.
Just give me a
Because
moment,
you
let me
could,
see what car is out in 1982.
yeah, because technically you can still daily drive a 1992 car fairly comfortably, I would say.
Yes,
Yeah,
1982 is Ferrari 308. You can get a 930,
yeah, it's gonna be hard to live with those
924. I can survive with a 924.
daily
Golf
drives.
Mark 1 GTI,
That again, it's gonna be very difficult to survive. I
Ferrari
mean, to daily drive
400i,
on.
Audi UR Quattro. Now it's just turned into me looking at classifieds again. Oh, it's the Mercedes 123, 1982. Yep, you can't daily
Mm,
drive that. Oh,
mhm.
you can get a 280 SL, the R107. You get DeLorean. Okay, we're
Why
getting
don't you name
sidetracked.
me a car that can be daily drivable in
I'm
1982?
still I'm looking through car and classic. 1982, C3 Corvette,
Nope, it's gonna be difficult.
uh, Alfa Romeo GTV6, Mercedes 500 SE, is the big boxy one.
Okay, that might be one of the only cars, one of the few cars that you can daily drive, I
Ferrari
would say.
308.
Oh,
No, I've just gone through 5 pages and there's nothing really
mm.
exciting.
That's when you know um that this is a fair way of taxing classic cars
There's
to
even
have it with
1982. What Japanese cars are there? What's the most technologically advanced in 1982? Because the 80s, the early
that
80s isn't that long ago, I think.
GTR, the Skyline,
Nope.
R32.
Nope. Nope.
Yeah.
Back to Googling. Wait, I would cut all this out. Nissan GTR R32, 1989.
Mm-mm.
See, if it's a 1992, I can have one.
Well, wait 10 years.
Yeah, actually, that's not too bad. I can still wait 10 years to get one.
Mm. Well, this is based on like the
Hypothetical,
imaginated
yes.
hypothetical taxation system that we came up with.
A hypothetical taxation system for my hypothetical garage in my hypothetical future.
uh, should we wrap it up?
Yeah, I think we should wrap it up. I should go back to Car and Classic and see what else is on sale.
We were wrapping
Okay.
it up just now, but
We can't start our podcast and we can't end our podcast. That is so us.
mm,
Oh well, we'll see how this comes out in the edit, and
mm,
we'll talk to each other again someday.
yeah, yeah.
Okay. Ciao, man.
Wait, I need to stop it.
Yes.